طيب today إن شاء الله طبعا إحنا we are going to base on what we have said in the first part of evolution. If you can turn on your cameras please do. لأنه أنا دلوقتي كل الناس are turning off their cameras فأنا حاسة أنا بكلم نفسي. مش بعرف والله أشرح خالص، أنا مش بغلس عليكم بس فعلا مش بعرف أشرح غير وأنا شايفة ناس قدامي. تمام؟ فيعني as much as you can please turn on your cameras unless you have a problem in the laptop or a problem in the internet that interferes with. مش مهم شكلكم يبقى حلو قوي، المهم بس تكونوا فاتحين الكاميرا. هاي نور. hard
Hi,
luck يا نور. I'm sure you deserve much better طبعا. I'm sure إنه all of you deserve much better than you did. انتوا ما كنتوش نايمين واتخضيتوا من منظر الامتحان، بس لما هنعمل الكوركشن يوم الخميس إن شاء الله هتكتشفوا إنه أسهل بكتير جدا مما انتوا تخيلتوا، وإن البانيك هي اللي عملت لكم like a brain freeze، وهتزعلوا من نفسكم قوي أو ممكن تفرحوا يعني إن الامتحان is that easy. أنا مش بقول إن هو ما فيهوش أفكار، هو it's full of ideas، بس كل الكونتنت is reachable و accessible to you، وأنا I'm 100% sure I'm pretty sure that all of you know the content. في ناس كتبت حاجات كويسة قوي بس مش في مكانها irrelevant، في ناس ما فهمتش السؤال وده أكيد لأنه you panicked. فأنا يعني I'm still proud of all of you، وأنا I don't blame you خالص، لأن أنا لو كنت مكانكم عندي نص يوم بس قبل ال AP Biology وقبليها عندي امتحانات AP عمري ما كنت هعرف أذاكر. وطبعا انتوا الغلطه الوحيده بس اللي انتوا عملتوها ان انتوا ما نمتوش. يعني في الحاله اللي زي دي احسن حاجه تقفلوا الكتاب وتناموا وتصحوا تحلوا بالمعلومات اللي عندكم من زمان، كانت النتيجه هتطلع احسن كتير جدا من ان انتوا تفضلوا صاحيين طول اليوم، لان انتوا all your concentration was focused overnight، وبعدين when you came to the test خلاص يعني all the neurotransmitters in your brain were depleted. يعني انا مجربه الاحساس ده. ف don't ever repeat this again please. يعني this is the only mistake you did and you didn't sleep. بس للأسف أنا ما أقدرش أدي بونس على lack of sleep. يعني هو أنا all what I did إن أنا I multiplied by 15%. يعني these grades are بعد ما عملت multiply. هو أصلا ال free response في 5% بونس غير البونس اللي أنا اديته لكم. يعني هو الماكسيمم من 55 وأنا حسبته من 50، ففي already 5% بونس، وانا كمان ضربت في 8%، فانتوا كده خدتوا 13% بونس. لكن زي ما قلت لكم never repeat this again، لانه واضح ان المشكله كلها كانت panicking and lack of sleep. طيب guys بس my internet has been bad for 2 days. my land net اللي هو الاورنج، فلو انتوا مش سامعيني كويس او if I'm frozen او my voice is interrupted please tell me and I'll be shifting to the other router. okay, please do this. يعني write it on the chat if you can't hear me well. النهارده ان شاء الله هنتكلم عن a new concept. I'd like best to make sure انه this is where we stopped last time. Yes, we're going to talk about the types of selection, the types of natural selection or artificial selection, by the way. So we will talk first about the natural selection. And as you know, that natural selection alters or changes the frequency of inherited traits in a population. Who can tell me كده roughly or broadly why natural selection is capable of changing the frequency of inheritable alleles in a population? What does natural selection do to achieve this goal?
I think عشان when we have a population and there's a يعني variety ما بين a certain species بيبقى في environmental factors that can cause يعني حبة منهم يموتوا عشان they're not favored أو الفتنس بتاعهم يعتبر قليل، فده هيتشينج الاليلك frequency بتاعهم، الفيفورد هيبان أكتر بعد كده.
Yes, very good, very good, excellent. فهو حمزة اتكلم عن يعني very important points concerning how selection can alter the frequency, natural selection can alter the frequency of an allele in a population. لحظة واحدة. أول حاجة إنه حمزة اتكلم عن variation in a species. يعني the individuals in a population are not similar. They are genetically different. So since they are different, when they are, يعني we can write it كده in the form of an equation. variation when you are exposed to environmental factors. Now we no more call them environmental factors. We are going to call them environmental selective pressures. Why do we call them pressures? Because if these environmental factors are negative, as Hamza said, they will be unfavorable to the life and therefore to the reproduction of the organism. And therefore, there will be a change in the genetic pool. There will be increase in both the survival and in the rate of reproduction, and this is very important, of some species. And those are the species that are well adapted. This is like a brief resume of Darwin's theory, with which I agree totally, by the way. As I told you before, I agree with like 95% of what they say, except for very few concepts that are crucial to me, of course. And there will be diminished survival and reproduction of other factors, of other individuals or other variants that have alleles that make that they are not fit, as Hamza said, or we can translate this into they are not well adapted. So by the end of the day, we will have certain variants. We don't say species. We start by what? We start by a population, and a population is the individuals in a population belong to one species. So when you translate this into words, you are not going to say that some species will have increased survival and reproduction. No, you are going to say that some variants are will be favored and other variants will be unfavored, or even they might disappear altogether and they might be extincted. When the survival of a variant in a population, again, I'm talking about variants in a population, when the survival and the reproduction rate are increased, we say that the environmental factors have selected for this variant, leading to an increase in the number of individuals of that variant. And if, on the other hand, the environmental selective pressures were not favorable for the organism, then the environmental factors selected against that variant. And I repeat again and again that evolution is a cumulative change, and it occurs at the level of the population. Let me remind you of those important points, because it's we discussed evolution long ago. So first of all, in order to talk about evolution, then it has to be at the level of the population. You can never talk, when you talk biology, I'm not talking about English, when we say that he evolved or she evolved, you can say this in English, in literature, but you cannot say it in biology. Yes, Adam?
حضرتك قلتي when the survival rate increases، بعد كده انا ما سمعتش حضرتك قلتي ايه؟
معنى كده انه environmental pressures have selected for this variant. ولو decreases يبقى معناها انه environmental pressures have selected against. طبعا environmental pressures دي هي environmental factors. They might be favorable or unfavorable. وباي ذا واي برضه عشان الكونسبتس دي مهمة جدا علشان ما نكتبش غلط في الانسرز. ان انا لما اقول unfavorable environmental conditions, I have to specify it is unfavorable to this particular variant, لأنه it might be favorable to other variants. وأنا بقى كvariant، أنا كindividual عندي a certain pool of genes. I might feel uncomfortable in a certain environment, and the environment would be unfavorable to me. But when I move to another place, then this place might be favorable and I would feel comfortable and well adapted to that environment. So first of all, evolution is at the level of the population. Second, evolution is a change. And it is a change not in the phenotype only, but it is a change in the allele frequency, as you see, in the allele frequency. And number 3, that change is slow. Number 4, that change is gradual. And number 5, that change is cumulative over many, many years. And now in the following slides, we are going to see how natural selection can cause a change in the population. And we're going to talk about before explaining how it can cause a change, we are going to talk about 5 types of selection: stabilizing selection, disruptive selection, diversifying selection. Diversifying and disruptive belong to the same term, disruptive and diversifying. So stabilizing is number 1, disruptive or diversifying is number 2, directional is number 3, sexual is number 4, and artificial selection is number 5. So we're not going to talk only about natural selection. By the way, the 4 types of selection, stabilizing, disruptive, directional, and sexual, are natural selection types, but we're also going to talk about man-induced selection or artificial selection. I'll skip that curve because it is repeated. We're going to talk about the first type of natural selection, which is stabilizing or purifying selection. Why do we call it purifying selection? Because it tends to eliminate the extremes. This is what we do actually when we curve your grades. When we curve your grades, we try to multiply by a factor that makes the curve of the class in the middle, for example, between 70 and 80 or between 70 and 90. And we are trying to eliminate the extremes, meaning that if we have, for example, the range of grades like 60 and then 70 and then 80 and then 90 and then 100, only a few students will have from 60 to 70, only a few students will have from 90 to 100, and the majority will be like this. Now, if for a reason or another, the extremes are many, say, for example, at the end of the year, those who get less than 60 will be eliminated or will redo the year, and therefore they will be, I'm talking about natural elimination. But we as teachers multiply by a factor to eliminate the extremes. We don't want students to be between 60 and 70, and we don't want students to be above 100. So if they have an extra credit like Kenzie and Jana, we are going to move that extra credit to another subject where they need it more. But this is not natural. This is artificial because it is the teacher who did it. But let's take a natural example and let's explain it on a curve in order to make it more understandable. Now, suppose I'm talking about, the y-axis here represents the birth weight, the weight of the newborn at birth. And sorry, guys, I'm sorry. This is the x-axis, so I'm going to erase. So suppose that the x-axis represents the birth weight. So the independent variable is the birth weight. And suppose that the y-axis represents the number or percentage, whatever, according to the context, of individuals who are in that range, This is the curve that is supposed to be present in nature. It should include all birth weights because there are newborns that have a weight of 0.5. There are newborns that have a birth weight of 1, others that have 1.5, and so on, until we have between 2.5 and 3, and then more. We might have 3 or 4. So this is the original population. And here the original population means the population as it should be. It should include all the intervals, starting from 0 to, or 0.5 actually, to 4. But what happens in nature that the survivors, those who survive, are in that blue range. Why? Because all the individuals, all the newborns that are less than 1.5, their birth weight is less than 1.5, are at risk. They're mostly put in an incubator, and many of them die and do not survive. Similarly, if the birth weight is too high, and this usually occurs when the mom is diabetic, for example, the baby still has, or the newborn might have problems after birth, and many of them do not survive. Of course, with the advantage in the advances in medicine, we might have low birth weight newborns that survive, and we might have overweight newborns that survive. But this is the classical picture that is, or the classical curve for stabilizing selection that has been like designed many years ago. Maybe nowadays it is a bit shifted. So what happened actually is that those no more exist. The ones that lie in that interval and the ones that lie in that interval, and only those with that birth weight will survive. And you can see that the peak of this curve is much higher than the peak of that curve, because for that curve, for that dotted curve, if we had 1,000 newborns, for example, in our study, like 200 out of them were extremes and died and did not continue their life. But when we are talking about the survivors, so all of them will stay. So the number and the percentage will increase. Okay, guys, did you understand stabilizing selection?
Yes.
If you have a problem, just write me on the chat, please. So the aim of stabilizing selection is to unfavor the extremes and favor the intermediate forms. And we're going to see the example I explained is number 2, but there is another example. Actually, what I explained is number 3. And there is another example of a bird called, or birds called Swiss starlings. They lay down their eggs in clutches, okay? So the clutch might contain a small number of eggs, or a big number of eggs, or an intermediate number of eggs. And it has been seen that the genotypes of the Swiss starlings that led to a clutch of up to 5, yani from 1 egg to 5 eggs, will have more, the eggs will hatch, and the embryos or the chicks, the young chicks, will be released from the egg. But if the number of eggs in the clutch is more than 5, then there is a high rate of death of the embryos inside the eggs. So maybe this is not a very good example, because we say up to 5, yani 1 is a small number of eggs. So this is not, we are only eliminating the extremes that are higher than 5. But this is the example that you have in your book and in your curriculum. Now, the second type is the disruptive or diversifying selection. Why do we call it disruptive? Because as time passes and over years, we are going to see that in the same species, there will be 2 extremes, 2 variants that are extremes. So the disruptive selection is exactly the opposite of the stabilizing selection, meaning that it favors the extremes and it unfavors the intermediates. So over time, the number of the extremes will increase and the number of the intermediates will decrease. So why does this occur in nature? Is it on purpose? Is it to harm? Do we have the purpose in nature to like disrupt or like kill those intermediates? No, actually, this is because the environment is variable. For example, if we talk about a species of rabbits, for example, and we're talking about rabbits that live on top of a mountain where we have snow, for example, and others that live at the bottom where we have mud or sand or grass or whatever. So suppose that the species contains variants, one that is dark brown, another that is totally white, and a third that is intermediate. Of course, if between the bottom of the mountain and the top of the mountain, of course, the top of the mountain is white because of the snow, and the bottom, if it is mud, for example, it will be brownish. If there is an intermediate color in between, that would be great, because the intermediate rabbits would be, it would be a favorable environment for the intermediate rabbits, because they will be camouflaged. You know, Taban, of course, camouflage means that you can hide in the environment because your color is very similar or close to the color of the environment. So in such a case, if we don't have that intermediate in between, then we will end up by having white rabbits only that live at the top of the mountain and brown rabbits only that live at the bottom. Why? Did they decide to do this on purpose? No, this is very important. This means that if we have a group of rabbits here, they will not decide, they do not think like this. No, they make the decision, I am a white rabbit, then I'm going on the top of the hill to be camouflaged. I am a brown rabbit, then I'll stay at the bottom of the mountain to stay camouflaged. No, what happens is that at the beginning, they're all present. At the beginning, the three species, the brown, the white, and the intermediate, are present in all layers. But what happens over time is that the white is the most adapted. So it is the one that will survive, while the others, because they are very dark against a white snow background, then they will be picked by the predators that will kill them. But they will not be able to camouflage. They will not be able to hide themselves. On the other hand, the opposite occurs. If we have the three species here, the dark one, the white one, and the intermediate one, and they are present in a muddy background, then this muddy background will be in favor of the brown that will flourish, that will survive, and will have a high rate of reproduction. So this is very important. It's not that certain organism, and it applies to all species, by the way, including human beings. It's not that we decide that we are more favorable, maybe human beings because they are more developed and they can think, but other animals, they cannot decide. They all live in the space, all the variants live in the space, and it is the environment that puts pressure on them, selective pressures on them, like diversifying them at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, if the environment is distinct, meaning that we have a very light environment and a very dark environment, then we will have two distinct species. This is what we call diversifying. They are very diverse from each other. There is no intermediate in between. And that's why we call it disruptive, as if you disrupted the species, you divided it into two halves. And again, disruptive or diversifying selection will apply only when the environment itself has two extremes and nothing in the middle. Snow and a dark environment and nothing in the middle. Because if there is something in the middle, the intermediate species would have survived. Or if they were. Yes, Ahmed Nassar ولا Adam, you have a question.
انا بس حضرتك شبه يعني جاوبتي اكدتي لي على معلومتي. انا كنت عايز اتاكد بس ان انا فهمت الاكزامبل صح. يعني مثلا الفاريانت اللي هو الوايت رابتس on top of the mountain over time هم اللي survived عشان هيبقوا camouflaged, والintermediate والبراون won't survive. بس in
بالظبط.
the bottom of the mountain البراون will survive more عشان it's more camouflaged, والintermediate also won't survive. فكده
Very
في
good.
الحالتين intermediate مش
Yes,
هيعيش.
this is very true. This is very correct. بس زي ما قلت تاني يا جماعة، عشان نشوف diversifying selection، عشان starting by، خلي بالكم هو ال color of the fur وال color of the skin لو تفتكروا دي كانت polygenic inheritance. وفي ال polygenic inheritance، و this is how بقى they integrate concepts in the AP questions. It is polygenic inheritance. وفي ال polygenic inheritance بيبقى عندنا a continuum of phenotypes, a continuum of gradation. يعني بتبقى الcolors متدرجة جدا. فعلشان you end up by having two opposite or extremely opposite colors، يبقى لازم الانvironment شخصيا هو نفسه متناقض، ما يكونش في intermediates in between. ممكن يكون في intermediates بس في الحتت الاكستريم هلاقي بس ناس brown وهلاقي ناس بس white. Yes, أحمد.
دكتور جاد، هو دلوقتي لما بيكون في diversifying selection، يعني لو diversifying selection بيزيد في population، ده معناه ان هو لو في genetic mosaicism ده بيقل، يعني they're inverse proportional ولا مش مع بعض؟
أولاً هو genetic mosaicism is a very rare condition، يعني you will rarely encounter it in life. لكن if genetic mosaicism، خلي بالك genetic mosaicism ده هنفترض جدلاً إنه there is، يعني إحنا اللي نعرفه في genetic mosaicism examples that are well known، مثلاً الكاتس، مثلاً الفير كات اللي هم الكاليكو كاتس يعني، ده هيبقى intermediate، ممكن نعتبره intermediate phenotype يا أحمد. ده لا يعتبر extreme الناحية دي ولا هيعتبر extreme الناحية دي. فيعني you can، رغم إنه this is a very rare example، لكن you can consider calico cats اللي هم they have patchy fur orange and black، they are intermediates. فأنت لو if you apply this to cats يبقى if they live in an environment like this، بس cats طبعا do not live in snowy areas، هيبقى the white cats will be favored by the white environment. وهنشوف دلوقتي examples more approachable يعني where the black cats will be favored or the brown cats by the dark environment. لكن الcalico cats will neither be camouflaged here nor be camouflaged there. It might be picked on and might be killed by the predators. It is related in that context بس يا أحمد. Thank you.
Okay.
طيب احنا نبص بقى على الجراف بتاع ال diversifying selection. This is the original population، وده بقى اللي أنا بأكد عليه. This is the original curve. The original curve is the dotted curve. وده يأكد كلامي إن في الأول كان عندنا ناس هنا في الانترميديت، ده بالعكس، ده كان الانترميديت شايفين النمبر of the intermediates في الدوتد curve كان هو الماكسيمم، كان هو the highest percentage كانوا الانترميديتس at the beginning. لكن بعد ما حصلت ال diversifying selection and this takes time، خلوا بالكم إن إحنا our x-axis is for the trait or the phenotype، it's not for time. لأن أنا شفت حد من الولاد بتوع grade 11 وراني الورق بتاع ال EST كاتبين على ال x-axis time. لا، أنت لو عايز تحط time يبقى تعمل جراف لده للoriginal population over time وجراف للdiversified population over time. لكن ما ينفعش أرسم الاثنين super imposed على بعض كده وأحط التايم. It would be completely wrong. طبعا الناس اللي بتدي private ساعات بيطلع منهم حاجات عجيبة جدا للأسف. فالoriginal population أهي the dotted population، اللي هو يعني إيه original population هنا؟ يعني زي ما قلت لكم the 3 variants of rabbits اللي توزعوا على كل الماونتن، على البوتtom وعلى كل الليفلز بتاعت الهايتس of the mountain. في الأول الانترميديتس هم اللي كانوا ماكسيمم. بعد كده as time passes ابتدى يبقى عندي الوايت مثلا والبلاك هم اللي favored، والتانيين شايفين بعد مثلا ما كانوا هم 90% بقوا هنا شايفين واصلين فين؟ بقوا مثلا 20%. فده diversifying selection. صعب جدا نغلط في الجراف بتاع diversifying selection لأنه بيبقى عنده 2 peaks. الأوريجينال population دايما اللي هو بنسميه normal curve. normal curve اللي هو الانترميديت هو الماكسيمم زي في الجريدز بتاعت الستودنتس. يبقى الكيرف اللي هو bell shaped curve ده بنسميه normal curve. بس مش أي bell shaped curve دي يبقى normal curve، لازم يكون البيك عند الانترميديتس. أنا ممكن أعمل لك bell shaped curve وتكون البيك بتاعه عند الاكستريم ده، أو أعمل bell shaped curve وتكون الاكستريم بتاعه ده. عشان أقول عليه normal curve وعشان أقول عليه الأوريجينال curve اللي كانوا الانترميديتس فيه هم اللي taking over، the peak has to be in favor of the intermediates. تمام؟ هنا كمان there is another example that's a very interesting example اللي هو بتاع الأفريكان swallowtail اللي هي Papilio dardanus اللي هي it's a species of butterflies. بيسموها ساعات informally كده بيسموها flying handkerchief، يعني كأنها tissue paper that is flying. إيه بقى الفكرة في flying handkerchief butterflies دي؟ إحنا عندنا 3 species. السبيشيز دي intermediate بس مش في يعني فيها gradation أو فيها variation، actually not gradation بس variation. بس variation في حاجة غريبة قوي مش في الكولرز. هو صادف إنه الانترميديت ده برضو لونه أفتح من الاثنين التانيين، بس هم variant في إيه؟ By being unpalatable. You know what palatable is? يعني something that you can eat, something that is whose taste is good. You know that animals, when they know, for example, that a particular species of a butterfly is not palatable, then they no more try to like chase it and predate it. It happens that species number 1 is a female and it is unpalatable. Species number 3 is also a female and it is unpalatable, but the variant, I'm sorry, number 3, but in the middle, it is palatable and it does not mimic any unpalatable species. I mean that. What do we mean by mimic? Because you have the word mimic. Mimic means similar to.
Okay.
So the three, this is very important. The three belong to the same species. But when we say that it mimics an unpalatable species, meaning that this purple one, purple and black one, mimics an unpalatable species, and this one, the brown one, mimics another unpalatable species. شبهها في اللون، شبهها، بس هي palatable. يعني هي أصلا طعمها كويس بالنسبة للي عايز يصطادها من الانيمالز، بس الفكرة إنها تشبه حد unpalatable، فيقول لك لا يا عم أنا ماليش دعوة، أنا إيه اللي يخليني أجرب؟ هي أصلا palatable by the way، يعني 1 and 3 variants are palatable, but because they mimic an unpalatable species, they are left، محدش بيجي ناحيتهم. The intermediate one يا حرام مشكلتها هي palatable زي 1 and 3، بس هي مشكلتها إنها it mimics a palatable species. فمن خبرة الانيمالز، من cumulative experiences of animals, they tell themselves this one must be palatable because it mimics the other ones. فبيخلصوا عليه. What happens over time is that the variant number 1 increases in number, variant number 3 increases in number, whereas variant number 2 almost disappears. And this is another interesting example of diversifying selection. And here we have the third example, which is directional selection. Every time you have a selection, up till now, it was because of environmental factors. Here, for example, although the newborns are born low weight, they cannot adapt to the environment. So it is again an environmental selective pressure that has been applied on them. Concerning those ones, of course, the example of the rabbits, it was an environmental pressure between snowy areas and grassy areas or sandy and muddy areas. And here again, we have an environmental pressure. Here, the environmental pressure was that of the predators that try to eat the butterflies or kill them. And here in directional selection, we again have an environmental condition, but this time it's a phenotype that totally replaces another phenotype. يعني it's neither diversifying اللي هي extreme, nor is it stabilizing اللي هي unfavor الextreme وبتفavor intermediate. لا، دي بتقضي خالص على original variant, and it is being replaced, totally replaced by a new variant. And the best example طبعا, it's a famous example، بيدرس في كل حتة، بيدرس في ثانوية عامة، بيدرس في الاي جي، بيدرس في الامريكان، اللي هم البيبرد moths، او هم بيقولوا عليهم peppered لان هم عاملين زي ما يكون عليهم black pepper كده، او the scientific name is Biston batularia. Biston batularia butterflies are originally had two variants, the white variant as you see and the dark or black variant, before the Industrial Revolution in Europe. So here the main selective pressure was the industrial, sorry القلم ساعات okay. طيب يبقى هنا the main environmental pressure was the industry in general، لأنه industry معناها إيه؟ معناها إنه في fumes، والfumes دي معناها إنه في soot اللي هو carbon particles. الsoot ده deposits on the trunks of the trees. At the beginning, before the era of the Industrial Revolution, we had trunks of trees were white. So we had white trunks of trees. طبعا white trunks of trees are better for which type? For the black one or for the peppered one?
The white one.
The white one, of course, لأنه the black one would be picked up easily كده أو picked easily by the predators وهيتشال على طول. As Industrial Revolution